Hey you, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Play Kerbal Space Program. My name is Satchmo, and this is episode 23. Today, as you can see on the screen, we are launching Duna Base 1, and today we're going to be landing it on the Red Planet, and beginning to harvest some of the resources from Duna, and convert it into fuel. Perhaps we'll talk a little bit more about that a little bit later, but for right now, you can see I'm doing a pretty standard launch. Getting down to about 30 degrees above the horizon, and just setting up a circularization node there. There we go. Now that I'm at the atmosphere, I can go ahead and separate off that fairing, open up my my antenna and my what do you call those things? The solar panels. I wanted to call them radiators, but they're not radiators. And performing my circularization maneuver, I've gone ahead and time warped to the appropriate time to actually have a Duna intercept, so I don't have to do any waiting, and you see I get a pretty easy Duna intercept right there. Same as we've been doing these last, I don't know, what are we on, like, maybe 7 episodes in a row now, where we've gone to Duna? 5, 6, 7, where we've at least gone into the Duna system. So, kind of old hands at this point. You can see right here, I'm getting a lot of torque, and, or flexing. It is kind of torque, I guess, but a lot of flexing. It looks worse when it's sped up than it did regular speed, but it's still too bad. I really need to remember to start putting struts. There's kind of a way that you can take girder segments and structural segments and add them to the different areas of the rocket and use struts that way. I mean, it makes sense that you can use struts on like side cores when you strut them to the center core, that's all fine. But when something is in a line, it's a little harder to strut. But at any rate, it still needs to be done because you get all that flexing. And of course, not only can you just shake your ship apart, but which is actually kind of fun to say, but it makes you very inefficient because all the time you're flexing, you're not actually burning the direction that you want to be burning. So. And you have to burn slow. So anyway, it's just a whole thing. So got my intercept and made a small little correction to go ahead and put myself in a nice orbit of Duna. Where here I am right now doing the correction that I needed to do. And we're going to do a pretty heavy aero brake here. I think I go down 24 kilometers into the atmosphere, which may be my lowest yet. And this is my biggest ship yet. So my momentum is going to be pretty high, actually entering the atmosphere. But of course, with the safety net of quick save on my side, I wasn't too worried about burning up in the atmosphere. Perhaps one day I'll do a playthrough where I do a like a no save playthrough. Everything has to be done, not no save, but like no quick save playthrough. Everything has to be done for the very first time, no reverting back or anything like that. That might be a fun challenge. Ever since I got this game, I knew about quick save because I always do research about games when I play them. When I load them up for the first time, I tend to spend a lot of time on the wiki, or near enough to the first time. I spend a lot of time on the wiki and watching YouTube videos about it, and so I tend to know a lot of the stuff about the game before I actually play it. And so quick saving was has been there since the beginning of my my time. So right there, you may have noticed kind of a weird edit. There'll be several weird edits in this video. I actually had a friend come to my house and spend the day with me the day that I recorded this. And so I had to go answer the door, and I had to go tend to him, and I was answering questions about the game and so on and so forth. Oh, here, I'll tell you real quick. Here I loaded up a terrain map. Since I got myself in an orbit of Duna, I loaded up a terrain map that gave me an idea of the elevation at the different areas of Duna, so I can find a place that was relatively flat, because Duna is really hard. It's a really hard planet in terms of surface things, because there isn't a whole lot of flat land. So here I am, I have the slope overlay on, and I'm kind of making sure that what I'm looking at on my screen is what I'm seeing on the map. And there I've confirmed the spot that I think I want to be in. My criteria here is that it needs to be big enough to land in consistently. It can't be too hard a target to hit, is what I'm trying to say. It should be somewhat equatorial. And that's it. And it should be, flat. So right there I found, if you're kind of looking at that blob that's right above the nav ball, that's where I'm going for. And I'm just kind of tweaking these little nodes here to see if I can get a path that flies over it. Now, in terms of actually landing in that area, I have a couple considerations here. One is that I want it to be daytime. So here it is, it's going to nighttime right now. It's rotating around the planet, and so I did not want to do that. I wouldn't want to land right there right now, is what I'm trying to say. Second thing is that I'm in a I'm in a, what do you say, an unmanned probe. So I need to have uplink the entire time that I'm doing my descent. So that means that at least, either the Ike Echo Relay or the Duna space station have to be above me when I'm doing this. So those are my two considerations. However, before we actually get to the part where I land, I'm going to go ahead and assemble the Duna lander here in orbit above Duna. And this is going to be one of the two slow parts of the video. I tried to speed through all the stuff that we've seen before, but here we are actually doing the docking maneuver, so I'll slow down the video to real time, and perhaps we can talk a little bit about it. So the first thing I'm doing here is that I'm selecting the docking port that I want on my craft, and selecting control from here. That's going to make the nav ball representative of actually facing the target, as opposed to how it normally is, which would be kind of at 90 degrees to the target, had I been controlling from the module at the top. And the second thing I have to do is, of course, target the correct docking port, and then switch over to that other craft and do the exact same thing. Select control from that docking port, and then select myself as a target. And there you see that ship is now kind of autonomously pointing at my docking port. Now, there's a few things that happen in this video that are interesting / frustrating, some of which are my fault or whatever else. But one of them is that, for some reason, as you see right here, when I select target, it wants to move my heading about 30 degrees below where that target actually is. And I don't know why that is. It happened last time as well. And I've even spoken to somebody in the comments about it, and that person doesn't know either. Or I should say I was having a conversation with somebody in the comments about it, and that person didn't know either. And I don't know. I don't know why why they won't hold that authority like they should. I need to look that up and figure that out. However, the result of which is that there's a couple times where these things actually don't face each other, because maybe I've switched between from target mode to SAS, or I've moved, and I don't know. Sometimes the craft will unlock from whatever authority you've given it, and will stop. For instance, a great example of that is whenever you go, if you're pointing retrograde, for instance, and you have it to hold retrograde, and you go to land on a planet, let's say you touch down, but then you bounce back up. When it realizes that your craft is now actually moving back upwards, it cancels that retrograde heading, with good reason, because had it done that, your craft would immediately flip over. Does that make sense? You would bounce up, therefore your retrograde would actually be pointing towards the surface, and then your craft would flip over. And the devs in the game know that, and they know that's a thing that's going to happen. That retrograde and prograde are often going to quickly switch places. So it seems like the devs have some way to figure out if your prograde and retrograde switch places in a certain amount of time, like relatively quickly, then go ahead and get out of that lock, that authority lock, because that's going to actually mess things up more often than that's going to help. So I'm certainly not complaining, but what I'm saying is that does happen here, and the result of which is that sometimes I have to actually go back and relock it, or I didn't catch it soon enough. But at any rate, at this point, we're looking at a pretty normal docking procedure. You see my prograde is on the target, and I'm facing directly towards it. I'm using my Q and E buttons here to kind of twist my ship, if you like, kind of rotate my ship around with respect to that docking port, so that way I'm in line with what I want to be in line with, because this thing is going to be kind of an H configuration, so I want those two vertical portions of the H to be in line, especially with respect to those mining drills, which of course I can't rotate or anything. And you see right here, I kind of snapped, when I snapped to the ship, my craft is actually kind of canted, it's actually kind of twisted with respect to those mining drills. So I'm going to go ahead and do it again. I'm going to back up away from the ship, and kind of redo it, because I was unhappy with my orientation. That these two things being out of plane with each other would cause considerable consternation in the future. So it's important to go ahead and fix it here while you're in space, and I have plenty of resources to do so. Another thing to think about, and I don't know what the actual numbers are here, but this is this is something I've observed happening. you can't, the game doesn't, like if you undock from the ship, there's kind of a buffer zone where you won't redock with that ship until you leave that zone. So you have to be kind of a certain distance, or perhaps it's time related, but I think it's distance related. You have to be kind of a certain distance away from that docking port before you can redock with that docking port again. Again, I'm pretty sure that the game, that's just the way that the game says, well, clearly you don't want to undock and then immediately dock again, because you would never actually be able to undock. So they give you like a little bit of time to actually move your ship away. So with that in mind, if you ever do need to undock and readjust, don't just sit there and bounce into it over and over again. You actually have to back up a considerable distance before it'll allow you to redock. And here you kind of see what I was talking about, where during all of that, I was targeted on my craft, but since I undocked with the ship, it lost the dock orientation that I had given it, the target orientation that I had given it. And I didn't realize that because my ship was in the way when I was looking at it. So here I had to go back there and retell it to target me, so that way we can get this thing lined up. It just totally slipped my mind that once we undocked, it would no longer have my docking ports set as a target. So at any rate, this is still pretty textbook docking stuff that's happening here. I'm just making small adjustments to make sure that the final product, that I'm happy with the final product. That's all I'm doing. So when you're docking, things are kind of reversed. Well, how do I want to say this? Yeah, well, I should say when you're going away from the target, things are kind of reversed. You can see here, when I'm pulling, without having to turn my ship, what I'm instead doing is I'm putting my prograde marker off to the right of that target, and instead of actually twisting my craft towards it, rotating it, I'm actually just moving kind of towards it and then off to the side, kind of laterally. And that's what I'm doing with that prograde marker. So normally, I'm pulling my prograde marker onto the target, but here when we're in RCS mode, I kind of like to put my prograde marker to let my prograde marker pull my craft onto the target. That's kind of a better way to do it. So I kind of maintain whatever heading I have, and then I just kind of move that prograde around. You see right there, I'm making small adjustments to the prograde marker to, if I need to be a little bit up or I need to be a little bit down, I adjust that instead of using WASD, for instance, to rotate my craft into a more desirable position. At any rate, right there, I dock, and you see I'll twist my camera around here, and that looks like it's a lot better. That's a lot better dock, and one that I'm happy with. Now, something that happens here in a minute, and I think I actually left this in the video, just to show you guys that, of course, we all make mistakes, and this is one that I made. For one way or the other, I forgot to open up my solar panels right here. The solar panel is kind of on the left of the screen. I know it's dark right here, and I apologize for that. But that solar panel that's on the left, this portion of the vessel doesn't have any electric charge, any extra electric charge. It's only running off the 10 units of electric charge that the robotic core provides. Before I say anything else about that, I mentioned this last video, but I'll say it again. When you have to unmate two things and they're going to mate back together in the future, it's a good idea to put two decouplers on facing each other, so that way you can decouple from both sides. I've had it happen that when you decouple things and then you try to turn your craft around, that decoupler will actually get in the way because it's still attached to the other side. So take two decouplers and face them towards each other, and you can decouple them from both sides. Anyway, it only had the 10 units of electric charge because I forgot to open up my solar panels. So right here, you see I'm dead in the water, and I have no electric charge. I have therefore no reaction wheels. I have no signal because my antenna's dead, and I can't open up my my solar panels. Now, something I could have done here, I quick saved, or I reverted to a last quick save, is what I wound up doing here just momentarily. But what I could have done is redocked with that ship with the alive portion of the ship, and when they mated, then I would re-energize that dead portion of the ship. I'll be able to open my solar panels and then undock again. So that's a good thing to think about during rescue missions. If you have a rescue mission where a craft is up in space and it needs a little bit of fuel, there might be opportunities for you to redock with that craft, just enough to give it a little bit of battery charge and then fly away, whatever. Just something to consider. Anyway, silly mistake. So here, the solution was pretty simple. Just open up the solar panels, and then now I can continue with the docking procedure. Now, I put all of the batteries are kind of in between the what do you call that thing? The convertitron and the second core of the ship. You can kind of see them right there. There's a stack of batteries there. So this thing will eventually have a ton of electric charge. It's just that I had forgotten that there would be moments in space where the three elements will be separated, and that I would need enough electric charge to at least maintain charge during those periods, like right now. Another thing to think about too is that the reaction wheels that I'm using the largest reaction wheels that you have, and those consumed, what you saw, as soon as I rotated the ship, it consumed all 10 units of electric charge. So those things are very resource intensive. Here what you're looking at is, again, I select target. You can see my mouse is down there on the target, yet I'm about 30 degrees away from the target. It's just bizarre to me, and I don't know exactly why that's happening. And it's happening kind of consistently too. It's not like it's like the same amount of offset every time. I don't know, it's just kind of bizarre. I don't know what's going on there. Something else you might be noticing is that I'm moving the mouse around like I'm talking to somebody. It's because I'm talking to somebody. That friend that I had who came over is a huge fan of Kerbal Space Program. In fact, he's a good friend of mine who works at Naval Research Laboratories in Mississippi. And he's a computer, he worked with computers. I don't know if I would call him a programmer or what he would refer to himself as, but he has a computer science degree at the very least. At any rate, he works for the Naval Research Labs, and so he's very kind of science-minded like me and my family are. And so when he saw that I was playing KSP, he was excited to come in and see what I was up to. So periodically you'll see me kind of move the mouse around in like a demonstrative way, and that's me chatting it up with a friend of mine. At any rate, this part, it goes back to how it was a second ago. I'm just kind of orienting the ship towards each other, selecting the docking port as a control point, and selecting the other one as a target point. This docking goes a lot simpler than the first. It's pretty easy for me just to go pretty much straight forward and dock with it. Kind of the way dockings like this should work. I know a lot of people have a hard time docking in this game, and that's one of the reasons that I've done so many of these. I feel like almost every episode for a while now. And some of the early episodes, too, have been revolving around rendezvousing craft and docking in space. I think at this point in the game, you've seen me do it probably close to 10 times or more. Not that makes it easier, that you should, now be an expert at it, but I think I've demonstrated the procedure enough times to hopefully it's helping people out, is what I'm trying to say. Because I do know for a fact that this is a part of the game that does mess a lot of people up. It really does confuse people. And I can see that because you're trying to move things in 3 dimensions in ways that you don't really normally move them. And I think a lot of it too, probably the most confusing part, is that you're not really using your eyes. You're not really visually mating these things. Now, I know that there are ways to do that. Some people put their docking ports on the command module and will actually go into the command pod view and use that to kind of visually line things up. I don't. A lot of times I don't even mess with the camera at all. I do everything from the nav ball. I could do this whole procedure from the nav ball because that's really the only thing that I'm interested in is where I'm headed, my prograde marker, what target do I have, of course the target marker, and in what direction am I facing. And if you have those 3 things sorted out, and your speed, I guess, and your velocity, your relative velocity, if you got those 3 things sorted out, you don't really need the visuals. But perhaps, I'm sure some people find it more important. So, they do what they need to maintain those, or to use those visual aids. At any rate, I think I was a little overcautious here. There we go. Yeah, I have become really quick, really slowly, 1/5 of a meter a second, and just very, very, very gingerly mate these 2 things together. My orientation is about perfect. I don't think I had to mess with my rotation at all here. I was very, very happy with my approach. I think right there I got a little nervy and went to twist it just to see. But yeah, once they made it, I looked at it right there, and everything looks about as good as you can get. So I was very happy with that. You see what I'm pointing to there is that I still have that bottom stage on there, which is going to be decoupled later. But in the meantime, I am going to use it to help me do my my entry burn. Or I was going to say re-entry burn, but I guess in this case it wouldn't be a re-entry burn. But my atmospheric burn is what I'm going to do. Excuse me. A lot of talking. I had to get some Coke. I should be drinking Coke anyway. I should be drinking water right now. But at any rate, I had to take care of something in my personal life, so so there's a little edit there while I took care of that, and then now I'm back, and all I'm doing is making sure that everything is open and unlocked. My landing gear are down, so I don't forget about that. And I'm just time warping to an appropriate time. I think that this pass, let me see if this is the one. No, I think this is the pass that I go ahead and do it on. Nope, it's the next pass. Yeah, so I'll go around the planet one more time, and the reason I go around the planet here is to make sure that me and the DSS, which you see right there in front of me, that's like that crew nodule right there in front of me, that crude pod was meant to say, we're on the same side of the planet at the same time, and it's still daylight, so these are the circumstances that I wanted to land under. So here I'm doing a radial in burn to lower my altitude. Of course, you can do this by going to apoapsis and decreasing your periapsis. That's another way I could have done this. And that's totally fine. In fact, that may be the preferred method. But I wanted to make sure that I was on the same side of the planet as the DSS. So I opted instead to kind of wait until that happened in orbit and then just go ahead and tuck down there instead of having to be way out at apoapsis and predict it. Another way I could have done this is just matching orbits with the DSS. And so that way I knew that we would be there at the same time. Something to mention here, I kind of passed it up, but yeah, you can see right here, I'm adjusting the thrust limiter on the small engine, because even though I'm using the Poodle on both sides, they're actually producing the same amount of thrust, or would otherwise be producing the same amount of thrust. They are offset from the center of mass, because one is extended further than the other. So what that does is it actually shifts your center of thrust off of the center of mass, and it induces some kind of it's a rotation, right? Because you're pushing over the center of mass, so your ship wants to rotate. So to compensate for that, I actually lowered the thrust on the other side to move that center of thrust back over on top of the center of mass. And here I tried to, you see I was fiddling with the engine there, or the fuel tank. I tried to transfer fuel from that stage into the ones that I'm actually going to be using, but for some reason I couldn't. I think it's because I can't transfer fuel through that. I don't really know why. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm not entirely sure why I couldn't transfer fuel between those entities, but I couldn't. So, at any rate, I just had to jettison it and hope that I had enough fuel on this craft. I happen to know that I do. It was totally fine. I have plenty of fuel in this craft. At any rate, I did want to use as much of it as I could. So here we are performing kind of a rapid re-entry. I have, between the two engines, I have plenty of thrust to slow myself down, and I think I overshot the area that I really wanted to land in, but I'm still kind of in the zone of where I wanted to land. You'll see a little bit more about that in a minute. The next thing to think about is I have all those parachutes, and here's where the second big mistake comes in that I made this Let's Play, or this video, is that you'll see. I start cutting parachutes to balance my ship as it falls to the ground, even though I was pretty confident that I was straddling the center of mass well, so it would actually fall naturally. But I made a silly mistake, and I started cutting some parachutes, and you'll see what that mistake is here in a minute. Yeah, it is rather silly indeed. But I mean, everything works out. Spoiler alert, everything works out. So here I have my parachutes armed, and you'll see them deploy momentarily, and that's when I'll go ahead and kill my engines, and I'll just use the rest of my engines again when we actually get a little bit closer to the ground. But at this point, I'm slowing down. I'm plenty slow enough, and I have plenty of thrust to not have to worry about continuing to slow my descent. And there they go. Now right there is a mistake. I was holding retrograde authority, and I switched it to just hold position. And I didn't take into account, you see where when I deploy, I didn't take into account how strong those reaction wheels were. So what I'm looking at right now, I was thinking, oh, okay, so the craft is heavier on the right side than it is the left. So I start detaching all of these parachutes, trying to balance it out. When in reality, it's just that my reaction wheels were actually were holding that authority, and had I turned off SAS, the thing would have fallen vertically. At any rate, I start detaching parachutes, and then the reaction wheels are now no longer strong enough to maintain that authority. So now the parachutes are unbalanced, and now I have to cut the other side. I think it's only at this point that I realized what had happened. Lucky for me, I actually brought on twice as many parachutes as I really needed. So it was totally fine for me to cut all these chutes. But yeah, really silly mistake. I think right here is where I notice it. Here in a second, I wonder, I was like, why am I tilting like this when I really, really shouldn't be? So I just turn my craft over manually. See, I turn on RCS and everything else that I could to try to regain control authority. And I guess the ironic part of it is that I actually had authority the whole time. The fact that I had so much authority is what was messing me up. So, very silly mistake, but I was able to correct it in time. Now I'm looking out to kind of see where all these hills, and because I'm not happy with where I am. And you see right there, I spy a little area that's a little bit more flat and consistent than where I am now. So I'm going to quick save. I'm sure that'll pop up here in a moment. Oh, maybe I didn't quick save. Maybe I was bold and just didn't do it. But at any rate, I'm going to kind of just fly over there. Now again, maybe getting a little bit rash. I kind of flew a little too high. I was a little over careful here, and which actually wound up messing me up. I mean, it was totally fine, but I really did not need to go this high to move over just the couple of meters that I wanted to. So anyway, yeah, I just kind of do a little bit of a hop. Here I am burning the other direction to kill my horizontal velocity, and which I wouldn't have to do so much of had I not gone so high. But at any rate, there we go, and I hop over and I find myself a nice solid place to land. The good thing here is that that first landing gave me confidence that this thing lands perfectly fine, and I have plenty of authority. In terms of all the bouncing, that to me is kind of the trickiest part of landing. It's not really slowing yourself down or getting yourself oriented or finding a place to land. Those things I think come rather easy. The tricky thing for everybody, it seems to be, is whenever you do touch down, you tend to bounce, and then your craft will flip out and it'll tumble over, and that's when things explode. So if you can avoid that some way or the other, everything tends to be okay. But at any rate, with those two giant reaction wheels that I have on here, I managed to maintain authority, control authority during the bounces. So here I am slowing down. A little bit of a suicide burn, not technically, but I do have more horizontal velocity than I really want, and I think right there I actually kind of turned a little bit to the wrong side. You see I'm kind of easing it back over to try to kill some of that horizontal velocity before I really touch down. And here we go. During all of these bounces, I'm able to bring it back vertical, and that's all I do really. Is I just look at that nav ball and I keep pointing towards the top of the globe, and until the bounces subside. Now at this point, I probably could have left it, but I do quick save and then I bounce one more time. I make one more small hop over what you're looking at right now, the direction that we're looking right now, because I thought that it was actually a little bit better of me to land over there. So I do kind of another small hop to position myself. As you can see, this thing has a ton of Delta V, especially once it's fueled up. This little guy here it could easily go back home, I would say. Or go to other star systems. I might be using this as a completely interplanetary fueling depot. This thing could land, I think, pretty much on any planet. At least with enough refuels, at least. I think it could go from one planet to any other planet over and over again. Once it's all set up. So now once it's loaded with ore, that might be different. Ore is really heavy, but fully fueled and empty of ore, I think it would be okay. Now here you see I'm not perfectly vertical, but I'm pretty vertical, and I'm happy with kind of the surrounding area. And right there you can see with the mouse I'm pointing at the direction that the rover is going to come in, and if I'm looking at the rover, I think that's going to be totally fine for it to dock with me. This part I have not tested. In fact, that's going to be the video for tomorrow, is me actually bringing the rover up here and docking with it. So And as I'm recording this at this very moment, I actually don't know that it's going to work, but I'm confident that it will. I have not tested it. I don't test a lot of the things that I do for these videos. Some I do, but some things I don't. Anyway, I'm kind of looking around again and kind of explaining to my friend what's going on right now, but for your benefit, I'll go ahead and speed through and just tell you I have the 2 radiator panels on the right side, which are going to dissipate the heat that the drills produce. And I have, of course, the 3, solar panels? I did it again. I couldn't think of the word solar panels. And here I am just drilling up all of the ore, and then I start converting it to monopropellant, and then oxidizer, and liquid fuel. Now this thing cannot convert oxidizer, liquid fuel, monopropellant, and run the drills all on one charge during the night cycle. I don't have enough charge for that, but it can do any 2 of those tasks. So I am able to drill ore and convert it to oxidizer and liquid fuel 24/7. What I won't be doing, because there's no reason to, because right here we have a completely fueled ship. You probably saw on the top right, the resource panel. Everything in the ship is indeed completely fuel. In this state during the day, I have all of the electric charge, and all of the ore, and all of the monopropellant and liquid fuel that I could need. So anything that comes and docks with this thing will get a full refueling. And that is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to land a rover down here, and we're going to come with a ferry, and we're going to pick up fuel from this craft and fly it up to the DSS and refuel the DSS. So that'll be the mission for next week. Really appreciate you guys hanging out. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you learned something. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.